and figure out how to spend our tax dollars. The big new challenge this year will be the wildfire recovery efforts on Maui and how to balance that with other needs of the state. We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email or call in your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and the PBS Hawaii Facebook and YouTube pages. Now to our guests. Representative Lauren Matsumoto is the State House Minority Leader. She represents parts of Mililani and Waipio. She also hosts a local radio talk show called Capitol Convo, which covers issues at the Capitol. Representative Gregor Ilagan is the State House Vice Speaker, representing part of Puna. He previously served on the Hawaii County Council. He was also with the Hawaii Air National Guard for 6 years. Senator Stanley Chang represents East Honolulu from Kapahulu to Hawaii Kai. He serves on the Senate's Housing and Water and Land Committees. Prior to his time at the state capitol, he served his district at the Honolulu City Council. And Chad Blair is with Honolulu Civil Beat. As a reporter and editor, his work is focused on how political decisions impact people and communities. He also has a PhD in American Studies from UH Manoa. Let's start off with a question, and I'm going to ask Representative Gregor Ilagan this first because he's from the Big Island, from a neighbor island, and actually has experienced natural disasters in your island. How do you see the needs of Maui fitting in? What do you think they're going to come to the Capitol asking for?
Well, Daryl, they're going to come asking for a lot of things, and I just want to first start off that thank you for inviting me to this show. And I got to experience 2 lava flows in 2014 and 2018. There was no lives taken in those disasters compared to what happened in Lahaina. Speaker Scott Saiki, he was very quick to act, and when he enacted the 6 working groups, it was actually a bipartisan effort with Minority Leader here. And what he did was, instead of it being the interim, where normally we would go out with our family and friends and go to our private lives, we had to come back to the Capitol and do some work. And that work involved around 6 working groups, which is the food, water, and other supplies.
Well, before you go through the list,
yeah,
what do you think is the main thing that's going to come out for Maui? What do you think the number one ask is going to be?
The number one ask, so when we look at wildfire prevention, that's going to be one of the number one ask. And looking at our package, we're going to try our best to address wildfire prevention, especially trying to add more funding into DLNR. And DLNR, they are in charge and a caretaker of 1/4 of the land mass here in the state. If we're able to properly equip them with equipment and personnel, then we're able to be better off in preventing future wildfires.
I'm going to go to Senator Stanley Chang, who's a housing chair also. Housing is obviously a huge issue. Just recently, the effort to get short-term rentals made available to fire evacuees kind of fell flat. So do you think that this is going to be an issue that's going to come right in your face at the beginning of the session to get housing built?
Definitely. In the short term, the administration is planning to use carrots. They're paying rents of $5,000 to $11,000 a month for these units. Already 1,000 of these former short-term rentals have been converted into long-term rentals. But that's a really inflationary pressure, as Senator McKelvey has pointed out, on all the renters on Maui who are not paying $5,000 to $11,000 a month. I think in the medium to long terms, the big problem is going to be infrastructure, because to build more housing, even if we could build the houses for free, they wouldn't have the water, the sewer, and the other necessary infrastructure. And I think in my years in the Senate, what I've seen is that the emphasis is on investments, not just one-time subsidies, but if we're able to invest in, for example, infrastructure in Central Maui, that will then unlock several thousand new housing units that will then, further not just the housing needs of the state, but also the economic development of the state.
Minority Leader Lauren Matsumoto, what are your thoughts about this? I mean, what do you think Maui needs first and foremost from the state legislature?
In regards to Maui, we're going to get the asks for housing, for the cleanup and remediation, and for a lot of those other issues. But I went over to Maui in December because even though it wasn't part of my district or any of the districts of those in my caucus, recognizing wanting to see everything firsthand. And we met with so many different people while we were there, business owners, those who had lost their homes. And the one thing that was consistent, what they needed, was better communication, right? It wasn't necessarily a bill, it wasn't, those housing, those other things came in, but they go, we need to know what the government is doing. We feel like we haven't heard anything. And so that was something that was really interesting going forward. And I wanted to further talk about that bipartisan bill package. And so when Maui first happened, I was able to meet with Speaker Saiki and went, this isn't a partisan issue. This is a disaster that affects every single person in this state. And so we need to do something together to make a difference. And so we made those working groups, and we now have, I think for maybe the first time in Hawaii, we have a bipartisan bill package solely dedicated to Maui. There's 12 bills in that package. And I think hopefully that will send a message to those in Maui that we're not making this something that's partisan, that's political. We want to be there for the people there and to meet their needs.
Chad Blair from Honolulu Simple Beat. I mean, you've obviously been covering Maui. You guys have done a great job covering Maui.
Thank you.
And what do you see as the difficulty that perhaps the legislature can help with? In my own visits, the divisiveness, the anger, the frustration, the sadness is just overwhelming over there.
There's actually a rare opportunity here. The crisis, the disaster, the catastrophe of Lahaina has really exposed in so many ways these fundamental fault lines. Certainly it's affordable housing that Senator Chang has been working on for a long time. Certainly the cost of living in Hawaii is something that I know the Republicans focus on a great deal. And fundamentally it's about trying to deal with these things like water rights and development and having too many people come in and take over. I'm strangely, cautiously optimistic, in part because I see the bipartisan support in the House. I'm not so sure about the Senate. I don't think the Republicans in the Senate can even agree with each other right now. But you do have this rare opportunity where the governor, the Speaker in the House, the President in the Senate are talking broadly about the very same issues that Lahaina has brought about.
I'm going to start right away with some of the questions from viewers, and I really want viewers to be the driving force of this discussion. Two of our questions involve the exodus, the brain drain, as it's been called, and on Maui, they're losing people because not only do they not have housing, but they don't have jobs, and it's just it's a nightmare of this. So, John from Kahului, high cost of living, high cost of housing, exodus of Hawaiians leaving for the mainland. What is the legislature going to do about it? In 2023, more than 11,000 Hawaii residents moved away to the mainland for good. What can the legislature do to stop the mass exodus from Hawaii? Senator Chang, what is truly doable on that issue?
This is nothing new in Hawaii, as you know. We're now, I think, in our 7th or 8th year of population decline. And the answer is housing. We have about 13,000 high school graduates every year here in Hawaii who are, part of our community. We only build about 2,000 housing units every year. So we force the 11,000 that you just mentioned to leave Hawaii. And that trend is only worsening today as rising interest rates make mortgage payments, much higher than they were just a couple of years ago. The Maui situation has really highlighted, the situation has gone from bad to worse on Maui. And the bottom line is we need more supply. And so after having worked on this issue for several years, I see the Titanic is finally turning. We have several pilot projects now underway. The Hawaii Public Housing Authority is proposing 4 new ones on Oahu. The Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation is working on one on Oahu, and the Hawaii Community Development Authority is working on one too. The bottom line is until we get the numbers to the housing production numbers to quadruple, quintuple, we're going to continue to face this scarcity, this shortage of housing, and we're going to continue to have this situation that you just described.
Let me just follow up. So when you say we're turning the Titanic, can you give me some more examples? Are we at the place where the state is going to focus on actual local people's housing as opposed to luxury developments, short-term rentals, and so on?
That's right. So all the housing that I've been fighting for here in Hawaii would be limited to Hawaii residents who are either owner or renter occupants and who own no other real property. So these would not be landlords, they would not be vacant, they would not be rented out or subletted out. They would only be for people who live in those units. They would also be income blind and without first-time homebuyer requirements, so that let's say if you're a downsizing empty nester, you are not a first-time homebuyer necessarily, but you still need housing, and then that would also free up the big house in the suburbs for a growing family.
I'm a little worried about the metaphor or the analogy to the Titanic. It hit an iceberg and it sank, and it was also a luxury liner, which I think illustrates one of the real problems here. So much of the housing is going to the wealthy or the 1%, the snowbirds. And maybe you should have said canoe. I would always talk about paddling the canoe together.
And Daryl, I also want to add that Senator Chang mentioned 13,000 high school graduates. For the last 3 years, this is my third time introducing it. I'm doing a resident tuition bill, which means any graduates from this state can come back and not have to wait 1 year to get resident tuition. I think our system, our UH system, should be able to accommodate those who graduated from our high schools and be able to come back and have that expertise and knowledge here. We need the brightest and the most ambitious people back in Hawaii, and I strongly believe that resident tuition can be a change and address that brain drain.
Lauren?
So, like Chad mentioned, the first thing I think of when we think of people leaving is the cost of living. And so something that's really neat that we did this year with our caucus is we did the listening tour. And so our entire caucus went to 4 spots in Oahu. We went to Kaneohe, Hawaii Kai, Mililani, Kapolei. And we kind of flipped the idea of what a town hall is. We let everybody speak to us, and then we asked questions to clarify. And in every single location that we went to, cost of living was the #1 issue. And so again, there's a lot of things that we can do immediately. You'll hear me say it every single time, but the GET on food and the GET on medical services, we are one of the only states that don't provide that, and that's immediate relief to people and help them with that cost of living so they don't feel like they have to move to the mainland.
You know, Chad, the governor made a big point of the green affordability plan, the GAP plan, which ended up being trimmed down to very targeted tax relief for lower income working people. Do you see that there's enough money to literally actually do tax reform this year? They always talk about how little money there is, but there seems like there's a lot of money.
Well, there is, based on the last Council of Revenues, more than we expected, but there's going to be another report out in March, and who knows how things are going. Maui in particular, its tourism industry has not recovered at all. I think some hotels are 25% occupancy, and of course some of those hotels are still holding people that were displaced by the fires. Rep Matsumoto, I'm sorry, I don't think that's going to happen with the GET. Year after year,
It
that's
should,
the
though.
big
It
money.
should.
That's the big revenue source for the state. But to Daryl's question about the governor, he just said the other day when he spoke to the House Finance Committee that he's still interested in trying to help people, particularly the ALICE population, the lower, the middle, the working class, to help them out. But if we don't have a big boost in revenue, a more steady stream, I don't know if that's going to happen, because you've been asking what the big ask is. It's going to be money largely to help Maui. And I don't know if I've heard others saying, if we're going to give so much to Maui, what are we going to cut to make up the difference?
Do you think, Representative Matsumoto, do you think that there is money available for tax reform? I mean, the governor's budget, he didn't reduce the rainy day fund. He didn't reduce the carryover. He promises it's still going to be tax reform. Do you think there's a lot more money in the pot from basically overtaxation that you should have access to and return it to the public? Is that what you're arguing?
Well, the governor also ran on eliminating the GET on food and medical services. That was one of his campaign promises. So I do think I'm optimistic, and I always laugh. If California can do it, we should be able to do it. In almost every state that has eliminated their taxes on food and medical services, they're getting those revenues back when people are able to have more money in their pockets to spend and keep it in the economy.
Let me just push back a little bit. In that the traditional cut taxes and it'll ripple out into the economy has been argued here a lot, and no one's really been willing to take that risk. But if you had to cut something in order to give GET, what would you do?
In order to cut something. Well, we look at our budget all the time.
In order to save money, in order to give away tax money.
Well, this is going to be probably not the answer that you want to hear, but the first thing I would do would be spend money. What we need is a financial database. I've been pushing this bill for like 6 years because we have antiquated systems across all of our departments. And if you look at them, especially when COVID happened and we were doing unemployment, when my staff and we went to go help, it was the black screens with the green text still. I mean, we are so behind the times. There's so many things that we can do. I was a part of an IT task force where we were looking at how we can actually line item everything that we spend, things that we put out for procurement. There's a lot of things we could do better, and then I think that would make a big difference on where we put our money and where we cut.
Let me ask Representative Ilagan, do you think that there's actually an opportunity to reduce taxes this year, or do you think that the services that people need are going to prevent that?
Well, I'm actually with Chad. He mentioned that right now the council revenue went up to 4%, and last year it was up as well, and then it went down on the next forecast. So I think we definitely need to comb the budget and figure out how to help out Maui as well as help out all our districts. We got to make some tough choices, but at the same time, we got to be mindful that we don't overspend.
Here's a question from Ed in Waikiki. I recently started a small business and struggle with understanding regulations that are often complicated or prone to change. Is there anything the legislature is doing or has already done to better the communication between our state government and small business owner? Chad, I'm going to take this to you. This always comes up. And do you think our legislature has the stomach to reduce regulations on business? And which are generally environmental, building codes, and so on.
No, it's very difficult, and a lot of this is written into very fundamental laws that govern how we operate here. I will say that the Hawaii Chamber of Commerce has a very strong presence at the legislature, and that they have been advocating on behalf for small businesses like Ed's in Waikiki. I mean, on the bright side, the minimum wage finally went up to $14 this last year. Of course, that's probably going to hurt those businesses, and they're going to have to pass that along. But it is very complex. It's very detailed, and there's a lot of opposition that comes to that. But you're right, Daryl. We keep talking about this over and over again. It's too hard to get a business up and running. Look at the problems at the Department of Planning and Permitting, for example. That's the city and county level. We just had 5 people sentenced for accepting bribes. So I worry about that. DCCA has its own problems at the state level trying to process things.
Stanley Chang, in your pushes for affordable housing and so on, you've heard over and over and over again about how we are the most regulated state when it comes to housing. Do you see the legislature streamlining that, making it easier?
That's a proposal that has, I think, a lot of momentum across the country. I think that when you get down to the nuts and bolts, though, it's a lot harder. First of all, if you want to pare back some of the regulation, for example, the number of off-street parking stalls you're required to provide, if you're going to allow, for example, somebody to build a second unit and then not provide off-street parking, which means that renter is going to park on the street, you're going to be impacting all of the neighbors. If you're talking about increasing height limits, you're going to impact the neighbors. And historically speaking, there are any number of proposals that have failed because they failed to garner that community support, or at least the community to back off from vehement opposition. So the reason why land use is so regulated in Hawaii is because of these many projects that communities have expressed very clearly are not in their community's interest, and that's not going to be something that we can turn around right away.
And Daryl, I just want to say that the red tape is not isolated only to the private sector. We also have a red tape in government, and one of the things that the
Newsflash.
Majority package has is we're trying to address the vacancy problem that we have. I mean, 1 out of 4 public workers are vacant, and what we're trying to do is reduce the fact that DHERD is actually taking 3 to 6 months to post a job and then getting those lists of applicants to the department. So what we hope to try to do with our package is to allow the department to, first DHERD would do the posting, but the department would be able to vet out the minimum requirement and narrow and create a short list, and then and then be able to connect up with the applicants. The reason why I'm mentioning that is because imagine if you applied for a state government job and you haven't heard from the state 3 to 6 months, you're probably, if you're like yourself is well qualified, you would probably get another job right away.
You
But
know, let
if
me
we're
ask you
able
though,
to respond quickly.
sorry to interrupt, but let me ask, is how does that, for example, help the public? If the government is better able to hire people,
Thank
like,
you.
so what?
So
Like,
it
what-
helps.
How does that help the public?
It helps because the fact that we got vacancies, we're not able to deliver the government services to the public faster and more effective. If we're able to fully staff the departments to do the work that they need to do, it will help that service a lot more.
So,
You know,
just so I understand, just to clarify, so what you're saying is an awful lot of these understaffed departments are unable to do the things that people need to do to follow the regulations, is what you're saying. So if you get the people there, then you can actually process permits and so on faster.
Correct.
I think the story you're referring to was Kevin Dayton's story in Civil Beat about the positions that, was it 27%? Certainly one in
Yes.
4, I think, is the figure. That was the most commented story on our site in recent days, and it took me by surprise. Who wants to read a story about workforce development? Well, in fact, quite a lot of people did and still want to know. And I would think, why doesn't the state work harder to get out the great benefits? A pension plan,
Not as
health
good as they used
benefits?
to be.
Not as good as they used to be, but a lot better than what's going on in the private sector right now.
Let me give Lauren Matsumoto a chance to talk about that. And one of the things that strikes me is the other day I was listening to a hearing of the Public Safety Committee, and the new head of law enforcement came in saying, we've got to pay these law enforcement officers as much as they pay police officers, which was like a 20 or 30% pay increase. Do you think that that's what's necessary to deal with what Gregor Iligan is talking about?
Well, I think it's a multi-prong approach. I mean, there's things like a pay increase, but I mean, our caucus is also introducing, we want a paid family leave bill. I think that would be a really, it'd be a big incentive for people to come back, especially when they know they've just had a child or when they want to come back into the workforce. So I think there's lots of different things we can do to incentivize, but I really wanted to go back to the small business question, the original question.
Right, I forgot about that
Yes.
question, sorry.
Because, I mean, my family, I come from a small business family. We have an egg farm in Wahiawa. It's 114 years old. I'm the 4th generation of my family to be a part of that. And every single year there's more and more regulation put on, and we are barely surviving. And we talk about in the legislature food security and all these things, and we don't realize sometimes when we pass these bills how it's going to affect our small businesses, how it's going to affect our farmers. I mean, there was a buffer zone bill put in, and we now cannot have animals in our pasture that we have, right? So there's these weird things that people don't think about, and usually it's your farmers or your small business owners. They have those day-to-day tasks. They don't have time to come down to the legislature to testify. And so I think that's something that's really important. We need to make sure we take a look at, especially when we're passing new regulations, how it's going to have that trickle-down effect and affect those small businesses. And one of the things our caucus is introducing this year is this Office of Entrepreneurship. And so the idea is most businesses, new small businesses, die in the first 5 years. And what this office would do, it'd be under DBED, it'd be able to help those small businesses and those new businesses get off the ground. And so Nevada has done it, and so it's a model that I think could be really effective, especially here in Hawaii, where we really want to value that small business feel.
Can I ask really quickly, if you wouldn't mind giving me a short answer? You know, there have been efforts to increase local agricultural production. You are in the middle of local agricultural production. Is it getting better for local agriculture?
I don't think it is.
Okay, thanks for the quick
Would
answer.
you, I can expand upon
No,
that.
that's good.
I have a
I'm
lot
not-
to say when it
wait.
comes to agriculture.
Maybe we'll circle back.
Okay.
I'm trying to be driven by our viewers, and so I knew this was going to come up. Eric and Kailua, the Biden administration is moving to change the classification of cannabis or marijuana. Multiple states have already legalized recreational marijuana. Isn't it time that happens here? Why is the legislature unwilling to move on this issue? I'm hearing Stanley Chang that the legislature is willing to move on this issue. What's the latest that you're hearing? The Attorney General has proposed a plan. Could it actually happen?
The Attorney General did release a bill that it had drafted with multiple parts. It was very clear in saying that this was not the Attorney General's bill, though, because they still do oppose the full legalization of recreational cannabis for public safety concerns. And so I think it's a head start for the discussion. I think that it's a major change, though, and I don't know that it'll happen overnight here in Hawaii.
I would say that it's not going to happen. If there's momentum, it's coming from the Senate, and you're absolutely right. I mean, Governor Green has supported this. He supported it on the campaign trail, and yet here's his own Attorney General saying, well, here's a bill, but hold off on recreational marijuana. And meanwhile, there's things on hemp that are in there as well. It's in the House where there has been resistance to full legalization for recreational marijuana, and I just don't know that it's going to happen with all the things that are going on this year. I'd be happy to be proven wrong on that one. I think it's high time. Sorry, bad joke. Thanks, Daryl. Back to you.
Well, I can't predict the future, but I do want to let you know our Judiciary Chair, David Tarnas, has been working with the AG and actually sent out some proposals. He shared that bill with me just 2 days ago, and I want to say he's championing it and working hard. So we'd like to see some results as well.
Is the Republican caucus open to recreational marijuana? It is quite an elaborate bill. I saw most of it. It's like 300 pages or something.
I haven't seen the actual bill yet, but again, when I was talking about our listening tour, what was interesting is when we asked the question, about 60% were against it. And when I send out a survey to my district every year, and I got about the same number. 62% said they were not in favor of legalizing recreational marijuana. And so I think it's something, if we're going to have those discussions in the House and the Senate, is that we really need to look at the states that have done it before. I'm a part of a wonderful organization called Women in Government, and one of the women senators from Colorado, we had a really long, candid conversation about it, and she told me, now if I had to take that vote again, I wouldn't take it. I'd vote in opposition. So I think it's something that as we move forward.
Have there been effects of the long term, or was it just badly regulated? Or
when we talked about it, she often went back to the education system in the schools. I think it's ironic that we are banning flavored tobacco and vaping, but legalizing marijuana. I feel like it's just this weird mixed messaging that we have at the Capitol. And so I think it's something that we have to look at and take a good, firm, make sure we're doing things thoughtfully as we move forward and look at the big picture and not just single issue.
And at the same time, I do want to add, because we were speaking about ag, there were a number of people that were complaining from the hemp industry. I mean, if we want to capitalize on a great crop that can grow here and be so useful, Thomas Heaton has reported on how people are frustrated by this new bill because of the way it would probably essentially restrict all the progress that we made on hemp. Remember, at the federal level, marijuana is a Schedule I drug, even though there's no real high THC content in hemp.
Okay, so another question from viewers, this one anonymous, although I don't think there's anything controversial about it. Is there a plan to address the rhinoceros beetle and fire ant infestation destroying palm trees? Beetles are sold in stores. There should be a PR campaign to raise ecological awareness. Gregor Ilagan, there's a big problem on the Big Island with that. I mean, I understand there's whole places that have fire ants, coqui frogs. Do you think the legislature needs to invest way more in this kind of control?
I'm speaking on behalf of me as a state representative. We need to invest as much money as we can in ag. I mean, our farmers on the Big Island is having to deal with so many invasive species already, and I honestly feel like we're not funding enough for agriculture.
And invasive species would be a big part of that funding? Or the department overall is underfunded?
We also got to be mindful that we have to address the non-edible ag, because there's imports of potted plants that invasive species comes through, but we don't want to hold them back because that industry is thriving as well. So we have to figure out the inspectors, and there's a lot of structure that needs to happen.
Let me ask Senator Stanley Chang that same question. Do you feel like we really need to focus more on this invasive species issues when it comes specifically to agriculture?
We give a lot of lip service in our community to wanting to be, self-sustainable. We're all very aware of the very fragile supply chain on food here in Hawaii. And I think if we're serious about these efforts, I think that these are exactly the types of investments that we need to be making as a state.
I got a question from Luella and Kahuku. On the issue of food sustainability, why can't the legislature take the lead on making it easier for farmers to survive? There are so many benefits to helping small business, diversifying the economy, et cetera. What's the holdup? Chad, what is the holdup on ag? I mean, you think?
I think part of it is an unrealistic expectation that we could return to somehow this ahupua'a system that the Native Hawaiians had back in the old days, where we could be a self-sustaining community. And with the plantation era ending, in fact, we import so much. Local ag is really only a very small part of our GDP. At the same time, it seems to be an area we should be developing more. And partly it goes for invasive species. I give credit to Senator Cheng's colleague, Senator Jared Keohkolole, who has fought against getting more inspectors, more intense focus, because the coqui frogs, the fire ants, and the CRB are actually here on Oahu, too, particularly on the windward side, which is Jared's community. But I feel sometimes that there's almost too much emphasis on trying to develop ag locally because we're so easily dependent on the money from tourism and from the federal government.
Lauren Bonsuelo, again, we're talking about agriculture, but specifically on the invasive species, is that something that needs to be addressed?
Well, absolutely. I mean, like we talked about the fire ant, that's even in Mililani Mauka in our district. You know, you have to pass out fire ant kits. I will give our Invasive Species Council credit. They have been doing a great job with the awareness
Agreed.
campaign and the education. I think nobody knew what the coconut rhinoceros beetle was just a year ago, and now everybody, I feel like, has at least some sort of knowledge. So they've been doing a good job on awareness. But to the question to expanding our local ag, again, I think our legislature needs to be aware of it. When I first got elected, I was the only legislator out of 76 that ever lived or worked on a farm. We have more now, which is good, but I think that's not always in the forefront of everybody's mind. I mean, that $18 minimum wage is going to kill your small farmers. It's going to be really difficult. So we have to look at that regulation when we're trying to help our ag go forward, or just be cognizant of our farmers when we're passing some of these bills.
You know, Chad, you bring up this, I'm not sure exactly what term you use, but this idea of the ahupua'a, the stream restoration and so on. But I think that one of the lessons learned from the Lahaina experience was that by allowing our agricultural land to go basically fallow. So even if you're growing anything, you're doing better than what we have now, which is nothing. But Stanley Cheng, I'd like to ask you, do you see water regulation becoming a big issue at the legislature this year? Because I know that with the resignation of Kaleo Manuel at the Water Commission and so on, and the reactivation of this issue through the Maui farmers who feel that by regenerating streams all over the state, we could actually have a better environment and a better economy and some agriculture. How do you feel about the water issue? Do you think that's going to percolate up, I guess?
We're with the puns tonight, aren't we?
You know, it's always a big issue here in Hawaii, and I know my colleague Senator Inoue is very disappointed by the resignation of Kaleo Manuel. I think that, you know, right after the fire, there was this pitched battle on water, and I think there was kind of a lot of political tension around it that hopefully the dust will have settled on by now, but I definitely think that we need to take a look at that, because water is essential for agriculture. It's also essential for, you know, the population of Hawaii, residential homes and so on. And so I'm not convinced that we've, you know, really fully settled that question of what the sustainable yields are in various locations, how they can be divided between agricultural, residential, and other uses. And, you know, one fun fact that I learned while working on the housing issue is that actually less water is used today on Oahu than it was in 1990. So
the sugar went away, right?
yeah, so, you know, people think that we're using a lot more water with the development that's happened since then, but that's just not the case.
You know, indigenous agriculture, Gregory Lagan, on the Big Island is a big deal. Do you see that kind of sustainability, the sustainable agriculture, stream restoration, as something that the House would be encouraging?
Well, it's more on, I want to say, what happened in Lahaina, because the public trust doctrine is going to be key, because there's been water that was diverted, and now we got to figure out how to restore everything.
You know, the public trust, to explain, the public trust doctrine says that those downstream traditional users have first access to surface water.
So I want to also point out that the Red Hill report came out, and that dealt with the pollution of water. And in our, I know I'm bringing this up again, but the bipartisan wildfire package, one of the environmental remediation, we're looking into monitoring water quality, as well as further research for urban fires, because they're different from wildfires that just burn the trees and barks and scrubs. We're talking about chemicals and toxins that goes from the house to the ocean. And those long-term environmental concerns are going to be a problem as well.
Well, cesspools, of course, is the perennial issue. What do you think, Lauren Matsumoto, about this idea of trying to restore the water and rebuild the environment from the streams out?
Well, I think it's really important to make sure we pay attention to the natural topography, right? I think that's something that everybody has kind of acknowledged, but like Chad mentioned, that gets really difficult, especially in a place like Oahu, where a majority of our island is built out. And so I think a lot of the neighbor islands really have the opportunity now to think about how are we going to deal with this going forward. They have a lot more open space than we do, and so I think it's something that's going to be considered heavily, especially after we saw what happened in Lahaina.
But you know, if you want to see physically what water rights and water division looks like, go to Lahaina, go to Kaanapali. On the left side of the road as you're heading to Kapalua, it's all green. It's golf courses, it's condos, it's hotels. On the right side, it's all dry. So while water may be in a public trust doctrine, the question is who gets how much of it and where and when, and that will, I do think that is going to be an issue. The Commission for Water Resource Management, the Land Board, the DLNR, you've heard the governor speak about making adjustments to the water code. That is going to be an emotional issue, in no small part because of how important it is to Native Hawaiians and how important the environmental movement is here, all with climate change hanging over us, giving us drought conditions.
And this has been an issue we've been talking about since I first got elected 12 years ago, but it's really coming to light now because of what happened in Maui.
I think you're right, yeah. On a completely different subject, so Alan from Haleiwa, will you be revisiting the electric vehicle charging law to install more EV chargers statewide, especially on commercial properties? And Joe in Honolulu, this is on the topic of energy reform, electricity. 2 days ago, we had rolling blackouts because of down generation. Will this be a reality for Hawaii? We become a third world country. That's Joe from Honolulu. Senator Chang, do you see us needing to adjust our policies on renewable energy, or do you think we're on the right track? Do you think this is going to be an issue this year much at all?
I think we have been on the right track. We've set some pretty impressive worldwide precedents with our 100% renewable energy goal. We also have 100% clean transportation goal coming down the pipeline too, and it's going to be a difficult transition. It's going to be an expensive transition. But our Senate President Kochi from Kauai always cites the KIUC, which on many days has 100% renewable generation these days, and given their history of natural disasters there, is probably in a much better place to be resilient than maybe some of the other islands are.
And Daryl, to the original question on the EVs, one of the initiatives on our majority package is to look into new state facilities, parking areas, to make sure that they're wired 25% into EVs. That way it's just much easier to get a contractor to get the charging units. And on top of that, it's a two-part bill by Chair Nicole Lowen. She also had the vision of urging, and I'm not sure if it's mandating, DAGs to look into all the existing state facilities and see where there could be a possibility to fund one or two facilities and retrofit them for EVs as well.
They sure could use them. Even the Capitol alone only has a few EV charging stations. But
they're always empty.
Exactly. But if you want an indication of how popular the potential for EV is, count how many Teslas you see on the road tomorrow when you go to work. They are gaining in popularity, and those are not cheap cars.
But overall, in a big energy policy, do you think that's something that this year is just going to be swept aside given all the other stuff going on?
I think it's a good point to raise that not everything is going to be able to get the equal attention. The senator is right. We have this 2045 goal that's very ambitious and has become a model for other places, but it's coming closer and closer, and I don't see us becoming all that more or less reliant on imported fuel. We did finally close our coal plant after a long time, but I think some have said maybe we shouldn't do that given these rolling blackouts with Hawaiian Electric.
What do you think? Go ahead.
And I think that 100% renewable energy goal is admirable, but I sat on the Energy Committee in the House, and when that coal plant bill came up,
Yeah.
nobody came out in opposition, and they tiptoed around it with comments. And I think looking back on it, I wish we would have had people who would come out a little more bold and say, hey, maybe we want to do this, but let's wait till we get to the point where it's a good idea. We might still want to have a more diversified portfolio so we don't face these problems. But because we have that goal, a lot of our departments or HECO, they didn't come out in opposition. They came out with these comments. And so I think that's something that the goal is great, but sometimes it might have been just a little too lofty. And we should have taken the time to make sure we're diversifying our portfolio and get to that point in a responsible manner.
You know, that does bring up another question that was exposed by the Lahaina wildfires, and that's the grids of our electric grids. And, you know, clearly that's going to be an expensive proposition.
You know, to put power lines underground is enormously costly, and those expenses will be passed on to us. With Lahaina, you do have an opportunity with the rebuilding of infrastructure, but it is going to take a long time, 5 to 10 years to get homes there. You kind of wish we had only known this back in the day, but I think that's another thing where we're having to look at fundamentally, how do we power our homes? How do we power our vehicles? Why isn't there more public transportation? Why do we have to have so many parking spots? Why can't more people ride their bikes? Well, it's dangerous. But
It is.
wouldn't that be healthy? We're a pretty, you know, mostly it's sunshine, mostly it's warm, pretty flat around the coast, and yet we're not really a bike-friendly state. Getting better, but not there.
And Chad, the Big Island is 4,028 square miles. And imagine the grid on the Big Island and having to maintain and sustain that.
Yeah.
And my minority leader mentioned diversity on our renewable energy portfolio. I strongly believe we should diversify, because when the lava flow happened and the geothermal power plant in my district went off, that affected the grid. So we can't just rely on one renewable source. We need to diversify, because you never know when a disaster might happen and take out that whole entire power source.
Okay, another difficult question from Valerie in Honolulu. We pay the second highest state income tax in the country and have the highest cost of living. What can the legislature do to lower state taxes? We've already talked about cost of living, but and I just feel like going back again, another tax-related question comes from another viewer. A lot of non-resident property owners do not pay their state income tax to Hawaii. Those people need to be taxed and contribute to Hawaii. Is the legislature doing anything about this? Gregor Ilagan, do you see tax reform going after people, for example, the short-term rentals, the people who may be underpaying taxes, who are out-of-state residents, or are there places to go where we could get more tax money? And in answer to the other person's question, you know, can we lower taxes for everybody?
Taxes is so complicated. I can tell you straight out.
No, it's not. It's a lot of taxes.
Well, the services that we need to help out our communities is reliant on those taxes. And Puna is always saying we're overtaxed and we're not getting our fair share. So I can relate to always feeling overtaxed and not having the infrastructure.
There's not much services in Puna.
Right. So I can understand that. But when I started digging into the whole financial and the tax system, I've only been here for 3 years, and it is very complex. A credit here, exemption there, they start adding up. What's fair? So I want to say kudos to our finance chair, Kyle Yamashita, because he really digs into those books and try to make it as fair as possible. So it's a complex system.
Let me ask Lauren Matsumoto, Do you folks think that Democrats or the leadership is hiding the ball when it comes to actually how much money is coming in and how much money would be available for tax reform?
I don't know about hiding things,
Well, because
but,
they tend to say there's no money, there's no money, there's no money.
but when we talk about cost of living all the time, right? And that's why we raise the minimum wage. But my argument is always, why aren't we taking a look at the GET? Why aren't we taking a look at income tax? Because our caucus, the Republican caucus, has put an income tax reduction bill or eliminating the income tax every year, and it's never gotten a hearing.
GET you were talking about.
No, also income tax.
Eliminating the income tax.
Eliminating the income tax, especially for the low and medium income earners. And if you look at the average individual for what they earn, that'd be about a $5,000 of savings in their pocket every year. And so that's a huge amount. And the one thing that I think I would ask is, let's just have a hearing at least in one of the committees so that we can have some public testimony and hear what happens rather than just ignoring it right out of the gate.
Senator Chang, same question to you. Do you think that there's a tendency to, in the money side of things, to say there's no money when they're accumulating these huge balances and carryovers?
Well, those are a little bit deceptive. So as you recall, last session, there was the perception of a large surplus. The legislature put a lot of it into the rainy day fund and also tried to fund infrastructure for housing in strategic locations along the rail line here. But shortly after session ended, the Council on Revenues adjusted downwards by $1 billion, and that surplus vanished overnight. So even when the Council on Revenues adjusts upward again by $250 million, as they did in their most recent meeting, we're still digging our way out of that hole from 2023.
Chad Blair, you covered this for a number of years. What do you think is the dynamic there? I mean, do you think that realistically the government could operate on regularly less money than it's bringing in now?
The late Sam Sloan, Republican senator, predecessor for
We all
Senator
miss him.
Chang. Yeah, we do. And one of the things that he did that I thought was terrific was he would actually produce his own version of the budget every year. He would crunch the numbers. He would say, here's where we could get some cost savings. Here's where we could have some tax cuts. And of course, those changes were not adopted. But I think this does go to another point. The budget process is so opaque, so difficult to understand. Remember, at the end of last session, Lauren and I were here with you, Daryl, and the president and the speaker. And the whole problem is a lot of people didn't even read the budget before they signed off on it. This time around, the president and the speaker have agreed to have a deadline to have the budget done, I think, right before or right at conference committee time, and also to have a couple of days of sort of a cooling off period near the end so they can read those bills before they vote on them. In fact, it was a great shock. You remember there were people in the House, Democrats, that stood up to criticize strongly their fellow Democrats for passing a budget at the last minute that nobody really saw. So I do think there is a way to look at those numbers different. It's a very complex, difficult document.
You know, one of the things that you're reminding me of was that what they complained about primarily was that the education is underfunded.
Correct.
And that's, again, a litany that's coming now.
Yeah, Daryl, the thing is, the state is in charge of the statewide education, and we need more funding for education. The state's also involved in all the healthcare and hospitals. The state's having to fund more, and we need more funding for that. And I mean, look at our jails. They're still overcrowded. We need to figure out what to do with that overcrowding. We need more money, but do we tax more in our communities? I don't want to burden our community with more taxes. We're trying to figure out how we can deliver more services with the existing taxes that we currently have.
And remember,
the
though, the DOE is the single largest expenditure for the state, $2 billion. Sometimes it's DHS, but it's primarily DOE. I don't think there's a whole lot of people out there that want to throw more money to the DOE. It is difficult. It's a single state unified system.
Our teachers are underpaid. Like, there's just so many things that this funding can go into.
And when
There is an argument that could be made that we're actually not bringing up enough money and we've underfunded so much of government that it's not effective anymore.
Well, I think we can also look at the structure. And I know Chad and I are going to want to go into some of the ethics and transparency piece maybe a little bit later.
Please.
But I did want to comment, when it comes to education, maybe looking at some of the structure of it all. We are the only state in the entire country that doesn't have elected school boards. And not talking about a whole bunch of little school boards, but our Republican caucus is putting in a bill, again, to have elected school boards. One, statewide elected, and each county has elected school boards, because every single island is so different. And when you have one statewide Department of Education, you're really not able to really meet the needs of all of the individual schools. And so I think this would be something to take a look at of when we're looking at the structure. I hope we get a hearing on that bill. It'd be really nice to hear what people have to say, and I think it would be something different for Hawaii. And
Yeah, and remember, it was just reported by my colleagues, Kevin Dayton and Megan Tagami, the DOE can't even spend the money it has, hundreds of millions of dollars in CIP for schools, of all things. Going back to 2018, 2019, still a lot of questions. We give you the money. Why aren't you using it? Is there anyone that disagrees that we need to help our schools? So that's a big frustrating thing for the public.
yeah, and it's a structure piece.
Yeah, well, and also just the political structure. One of the reasons all that money is sitting at DOE is because every legislator wants to be able to say, oh, I funded all these DOE projects in my district, even though they know they're never going to get built, but it looks good on a brochure. That's just my my editorial comment for the night. I only get one.
We'll give you another.
I'm going to do a kind of a lightning round here. We've got 5 minutes left, and any one of you wants to pitch in on any one of these. We don't have time to go around the horn on all of them. So is the legislature happy with the progress, if you could call it that, of the Illegal Fireworks Task Force? Can you do more? It's getting crazy out there. Mark and Eva, Senator Stanley Chang, they had some big seizures, and they got a whole new Department of Law Enforcement. Are we going to make some progress about that?
Actually, I've heard that the amount of fireworks this year was substantially reduced in a lot of areas compared to last year. I think partly due to that large seizure operation. So progress is coming.
Anybody else on fireworks?
And I'm skeptical. I don't know what neighborhood you were in on New Year's Eve. Where I was, it looked just pretty spectacular. There is legislation to once again take a stronger look at shipping containers and whatnot. I think the fact that the wildfires our dry grasses are so vulnerable to fireworks, I think is going to help spur perhaps this year. But I think the cultural traditions that we have here make it very, very difficult to change that, even though people have trouble breathing and animals are terrified.
My impression was that it was a shorter period of chaos this year. That was my impression. And I live where I can see Waipahu, Eva, Kapolei, and Pearl City. So that's what the impression was. Okay. There are several military leases coming due in the next few years. Given the disaster the Navy caused at Red Hill and the lack of trust in the way the military handles itself in other areas, is it time to rethink this setup of our system? The military has still a powerful, huge presence in this state. Any of you folks want to? Lauren?
And I think this is already happening, right? They're looking at those leases. I used to represent the North Shore, and we're with Dillingham Airfield, right? I think there's a lot of those discussions that came up during when we were talking about how do we keep Dillingham Airfield going with the military leases, some of those things coming up, Pohakuloa. I think there's a lot of conversation that's happening in the community, and so that's going to be something that's interesting as it moves forward.
Do you think the footprint of the military will be reduced here?
No, I don't think so. This is the Pacific Century. This is where the Indo-PACOM Center is. There's definitely more awareness and anger at the military and the leasing of those lands, let alone Red Hill. But it's so fundamental to the nation's security. I'm not making an opinion. I'm just making a statement that I think is reality.
So we only got a couple minutes left. We've got 1 minute left. And let me ask Chad Blair this. How easy it is for people to get their word into the legislature? How much better is it? Is it easy to get in? How do people get their words to the legislature?
It's easier than ever. All the hearings are now broadcast. You can submit your testimony almost instantly, although they don't always post it right away. Having said that, they're going to close the public parking in the Capitol basement. I guess you can park at the Department of Health.
Got a metal detector.
You got metal detectors to go through, so at the same time, it's like one step forward, one step back. But at least for those who are digital, it's easier than ever.
Plus, all the hearings are online.
Correct.
You can go back and look at a hearing that already happened. You can look at it in real time.
Can I put a plug in, Daryl?
Real quick, real fast.
We are one of the
like
only
10
states
seconds.
that have a public access room. So look up the public
Those guys are the
access
greatest.
room. They're fabulous, and they help you get involved at the
Well,
legislature.
thank you, and all of you for joining us tonight. And we thank our guests, Representative Lauren Matsumoto, Senator Stanley Chang, Representative Gregory Logan, and Chad Blair. Next week, invasive species alert. From the creepy crawlies to the microscopic invasive species continue to find their way into the islands. Coconut rhinoceros beetles, little fire ants, and coqui frogs are just some of the critters wreaking havoc across the state. What can we do to stamp them out before it's too late? Please join us then. I'm Daryl Huff from Insights on PBS Hawaii. Aloha.
Local broadcasts of Insights on PBS Hawaii are made possible by the support of viewers like you. Mahalo, and by Ulupono Initiative, building a more sustainable Hawaii by investing in local food, renewable energy, clean transportation, and waste and freshwater management. Hawaiian Electric, helping residents and businesses prepare for hurricane season. Visit hawaiianelectric.com/safety to get your emergency preparedness handbook. Carl Smith Ball, providing legal services throughout Hawaii and the Pacific since 1857, making a positive